anyone is on, feel free to say hello. I'm excited. Yay. Facebook, it's working. Let's see if YouTube has. Okay, perfect. It looks like everything is working technology-wise. Yay. I'm always happy about that. So, hello. Um, yes, happy spring. From where I'm at, I cannot see who said that, but if you want to say say who it is, let me know. Happy spring to you as well. I know you are coming from Facebook. I just can't see your lovely name. I'm gonna guess Dana though. If it is, happy spring and hello, Dana. Yes, yay, I was right. I love having you watch these, so thank you for supporting me and being a part of the videos. I am so excited. Aw, hearts to you too. I'm so excited because we're starting to see some grass in our yard, and I thought it was going to be snow forever and ever and ever, and now we're seeing glimpses of some grass, and I'm pumped. So I'm representing a flower on my shirt because I'm ready for spring. I hope everyone is having a fantastic week. I hope that you enjoyed the mitochondrial videos as well. This is kind of similar in a sense that, adrenal fatigue and not, you're happy to see mud. Yes. Oh my gosh. Me too. Me too. I never thought I would be so excited to see mud, but I am. Uh, just not for my dogs. They're not fun to clean up. But the last couple weeks I talked about mitochondrial dysfunction and how that can really, steal the energy from people, especially because they are the powerhouses of our cell, and they help with providing our cells energy. And so adrenal fatigue kind of, falls under the spectrum as well. Um, you know, Fatigue is like a big thing that I'm really hitting on because I am noticing so much burnout for people. Um, it's it's crazy, and it's become this badge of honor to, if you're burned out, oh, you must be doing something right. Wherein in my case, I tell people, no, we do not want to be burning out. That's the opposite thing of what we're wanting to do. And so I want to give great insights to you guys on like why your body may be so exhausted. Like here are some underlying layers. So that's what I get really excited to talk about. And adrenal fatigue falls into this category. And it's one that is actually a problem, especially for women. So let's get started. Um, so I don't know if anyone has heard of adrenal fatigue before. If you have, put a thumbs up in the comments. If you haven't, maybe put a question mark of like, I don't know. But I feel like it's a phrase that Western medicine hasn't really truly acknowledged yet. Yay, I'm so happy that you've heard of it. Or yeah, it's just not really recognized as a term. And I know there are different words for it. There's adrenal dysfunction, just plain burnout as well. But adrenal fatigue has kind of been like, if you bring that up, people will just be like, nah, yeah, no, not a thing. And really, it is a thing. So what adrenal fatigue is it stems from overworked adrenal glands due to hyperactive stress responses from the body. So I've brought this up multiple times of our fight or flight response, right? So we are under chronic stress all the time, and with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue and autoimmune conditions, and beyond that, our bodies are constantly being stressed and taxed. When you have a chronic illness, your body is in overdrive. It's working as hard as it can to both heal and survive. And you tend to have this heightened stress response. Um, and in general, our culture tends to have a heightened stress response. It was a great response when we were being chased by a lion, years ago and needed to survive. But now traffic will lead to a stress response. Maybe getting in a fight with a friend will lead to a response. Deadlines, stress response. I've noticed my stress response with, like, if I accidentally feel like I knock something, I feel like it's gonna fall. Like, things are tightened in and stressed out in my body. Like, it's a really easy thing to go to, and our bodies are doing that constantly. So we want to bring that down. But this hyperactive stress response is very common for people battling fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue, as well as many other autoimmune conditions like Hashimoto's, for example, but also like chronic illness in general. Um, and again, like I mentioned, beyond that as well. So the hyperactive stress response causes the adrenal glands to work hard, all continuously have this bombardment of stress on the adrenal will then force them to try to pump out cortisol at a high rate continuously. So our adrenals, will help with DHEA, which helps with like our hormones. There's a connection with our adrenals and our thyroid. It helps with steroid hormones, and cortisol is a big one that our adrenal is. Oh my gosh, the word um, uh, is is like the manufacturer out. There we go. That's not even the right word that I'm still looking for, but clearly the word is not coming to me right now. But the adrenals, cortisol, they're responsible for cortisol and provoking cortisol. So, or promoting cortisol. The adrenals never get a rest period until they burn out, and we have this constant adrenal response. So this leads to secretion of cortisol in abnormal patterns. So as you can imagine, a lot of things can go haywire with this. So inflammation alters our adrenal response as well, causing low cortisol secretion and DHEA sulfate, the two main adrenal hormones. This is shown in patients with chronic inflammatory disease. Our immune system, it acts as a constant surveillance system, and inflammation is the chemical and cellular response that is mobilized when the surveillance system registers something it doesn't like. So our body is constantly monitoring things that are going on. And if something is out of balance, or there is an intruder or invader, or something doesn't seem right in the body, our body then wants to get rid of it or fix the problem, right? So it's this constant surveillance system going on. So the inflammatory reactions then, they turn on and off all day long in minute amounts as a response to the millions of potential threats that we might encounter throughout our day. Imagine all the things that we are doing in our day and all the threats that we are encountering and our body sees as a threat. So there's a lot going on with this. There are so many triggers in our daily lives that the inflammatory responses then start to go into overdrive. So this isn't just for people with chronic illness. Like, this is for everyone. But some people are really good at bringing their stress response and back down to the rest level, and get it back in balance really quickly. Whereas a lot of people, I'd say the majority of people, do struggle, and we constantly have this like low stress response going on, and it never gets back to baseline. Between our diet, pollution, toxins, and other stressors as well, that eventually leads to chronic inflammation. And when our immune system becomes activated, it sounds the alarms, and our body, when it's constantly on the defense, problems are going to arise. And this is where we start to see things going on with our adrenals. So some common deep root causes of adrenal dysfunction or adrenal fatigue include chronic emotional and mental stress, food triggers, blood sugar imbalances and nutritional insufficiencies, gut imbalances, toxic overload, and immune disruption, and stealth infections. So imagine all the people that are covered by just these 5 categories. That is majority of people, if not everyone. Um, so this goes beyond just fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue and autoimmune conditions. So and it's much higher for women too. So to understand this further, let's dive into the process of the stress response. So stress places demands on the body that are primarily met by the activation of two systems, causing the stress response. So we have the sympathetic nervous system, um, which catecholamines are involved. So that is norepinephrine and epinephrine, and then it stimulates different systems in the body. So your heart rate starts to increase, your blood pressure and increases, and your body diverts from that rest and digest phase because it's being activated. So you start to have this poor digestion taking place too during this response. And then there's the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis that is activated. So cortisol is activated, and the functions of cortisol is that it stimulates the liver to convert amino acids to glucose. Under stress, our body wants and needs glucose to help fight. It Cortisol also stimulates increased glycogen in the liver. It mobilizes fatty acids into the blood. It increases coagulation, so blood, like thickening of the blood. It suppresses parts of the inflammatory response as well and prevents the loss of sodium in the urine, maintains resistance to stress, maintains motility. It also, plays a role in our sleep as well. It stimulates that energy, keeping you awake. And prolonged elevations in cortisol result in stimulation of fat deposits. So visceral adipose tissue, which then it tends to go around the belly area. And when you have more fat accumulated in the visceral adipose tissue, we start to have estrogen dominance that occurs. So that becomes very pro-inflammatory. It starts to then make our hormones out of whack, right? Because then we're having higher levels of estrogen, which then leads to even more weight gain, sugar cravings, all these different things. Prolonged elevations in cortisol also results in increased blood pressure, increases in protein breakdown, demineralization of the bone, suppression of our immune system overall, memory loss, because it leads to changes in our brain structure too, depression, and increases in blood sugar. So as you can see, having prolonged cortisol activation and elevated cortisol for a long period of time leads to a lot of system dysfunctions all over. So there are many effects that happen. So consequences of chronically elevated cortisol, that central obesity that I talked about, osteoporosis because of that bone demineralization, thyroid dysfunction, immune suppression, gastrointestinal dysfunction, and then depression and memory impairment. And those are just some things. Stress is also a central player in functional alterations of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal thyroid gonadal axis. So when under stress, we often make poor food choices, which furthers hormonal and nutritional imbalances. So think about when you're under stress, you tend to choose those foods that are higher quality. Does your hunger increase? Does your hunger decrease? Are you not hungry? So you're not eating enough. So there are so many different ways in where our food choices are then affected because of our stress. And then it creates this cycle, right? This snowballing effect. So overall, the constant demand of our adrenals also leads to changes within our thyroid as well. But I'm not going to discuss that in today's talk or training because obviously that would take a whole lot of time when it comes to our thyroid health. And I do plan on discussing that in a couple weeks, probably, maybe 3 weeks. So, yes, used to increase under stress, but now it's really flipped to not eating enough. Yes. So when we are under stress, our bodies and signals are not they're not functioning necessarily optimally. It's like all about survival, right? So we do, when we're under stress, our body changes. We're not likely getting what we need. Our food choices are not great. I know I tend to just to snack, I guess. And I don't know if it's just because like when I'm stressed, I need to be grounded. And so having those starchy foods, those heavier foods can help ground my body. I mean, there are so many different things, right? Um, so it's like start taking note if you haven't noticed, when you're under stress, what types, like what patterns are you noticing? That can give some huge insight. And then, I understand that while you're under stress, you might not even, that might to your mind. But bringing in mindfulness as much as we can help with correcting things. So there are 3 stages when it comes to our adrenals. So we have this first stage of arousal, right? It is more of our um, normal baseline, like response to stress or arousal. So both cortisol and DHEA increase with episodic stress, but we recover from it. So we can get back to baseline. So this is perfectly normal. We want this normal response. DHEA is a precursor for estrogen and testosterone. I should have mentioned that earlier. It also reverses immune suppression caused by excess cortisol. It stimulates bone deposition or deposition and remodeling. It lowers total cholesterol and LDL levels, increases muscle mass. T3 for thyroid, which again, I will talk more about, those different thyroid hormones. But DHEA is something that we really need to stay in balance. When we have this first stage of our adrenal, like, or HPA arousal, many times it's asymptomatic. We're not noticing any symptoms arise with it. It's a healthy response that we want, like I mentioned before. It's when we start to get to stage 2 where we have more of this adaptation that goes. So when we're not getting back to that normal base level and we're having this chronic stress kind of under the, that surface, under the surface that's going on, we have this cortisol that's chronically elevated. And during this stage 2, our DHEA actually declines. So we can't make enough or keep up. We tend to feel stressed during this stage. We can get anxiety attacks, mood swings, depression can start to evolve. Again, we have those increases in cortisol. And what's really helpful for noticing kind of that is doing a urine or salivary cortisol like throughout the day. Instead of, a lot of doctors will just do like a blood test to see where your cortisol levels are at, and they look at a one time period. We want to notice the pattern throughout the day, because when you want it to be more elevated in the morning, because when our cortisol elevates in the morning, it's our awake response, right? So our melatonin is lower in the morning because we can start to see a little bit of decline of, you don't want to have too much decline in the afternoon, but as we're getting closer to the evening, our cortisol levels we want to see going down. We don't want to see them spiked. And if they're, chronically high or even low in the morning and higher later in the day and into the evening, then we know that we're having elevated cortisol and there's something that is going on. So there's more to it. We don't want to have this chronically elevated cortisol. Increases in cortisol, epinephrine, and norepinephrine obviously occur during this adaptation stage. And this is where, right, throughout the day, we want to see the changes in the cortisol. But stage 2 is where we get that like stressed and wired type of feeling. or even like that tired and wired type of feeling. So it's like your foot is on the gas pedal, go, 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 and you can't stop. This is where like sleep, like you can't turn your brain off, you can't get to sleep. Um, Even though you're tired and you want to, it's not a fun feeling. There's alterations in glucose tolerance, blood pressure, our thyroid and sex hormone metabolism, and more. So the increased cortisol may actually decrease the manufacturing activity of progesterone, estrogens, DHEA, like I mentioned, and testosterone. And this is actually called like a cortisol steal. So unfortunately, like when your cortisol levels, those other things start to diminish and get stolen from the cortisol. At this stage, you feel like you're going pedal to metal, like I mentioned, and you can't seem to get off. So stage 3 is where we hit that exhaustion stage. So this is where that adrenal insufficiency, we start to see low cortisol and low DHEA, where stressed and tired versus the stressed and wired, like we saw in stage 2. Depression and fatigue are very, very common during this time. So, some conditions that are associated with, HPA axis arousal and the elevated cortisol. So, this is more of that stage 2, that adaptation stage. We see severe chronic disease involved with it, melancholic depression, anorexia nervosa, panic disorders, OCD, chronic excessive exercise, memory impairment, malnutrition, type 2 diabetes, hypothyroid, like Hashimoto's, thyroiditis, central obesity, osteoporosis, immune depression, GI dysfunction, PCOS, endometriosis. I don't know why that one's so hard to say, and infertility. And some symptoms of this elevated cortisol that we see in this stage 2. So, irritability and anxiety, or it can be that fatigue, low energy, you can start to see too. Night sweats, muscular tremors, poor sleep, sleep disturbances, hot flashes can start to appear, increased susceptibility to infection, shakiness between meals and having those sugar cravings, um, weight gain around the middle, like I mentioned, afternoon fatigue, caffeine cravings and sugar cravings at about 3 to 4 p.m. Those are big indicators right there. Allergies and food reactions and hives also can show up. Cravings for salty and fatty foods or carbs, like those starches and baked goods. Brain fog starts to show up, difficulty sticking with a diet or exercise plan. So you start to feel like I have no willpower. I can't seem to stick with, my diet, or, stick with the eating pattern that I want. I just can't seem to have the willpower for it. It could be because your adrenals are starting to burn out and it's nothing to do with your willpower. But it has everything to do with your body being overworked and tired. Digestive problems, eczema, fatigue after eating, chronic overwhelm, hormone problems of any type, including PMS, infertility, endometriosis, PCOS, bothersome symptoms, insomnia, low sex drive, stubborn weight that just doesn't seem to budge, being overweight, or even difficulty gaining weight. So waking up tired, even though you've slept all night and you've gotten the 8 or 9 hours, 8 or 9 hours, let's say, you're still exhausted when you wake up. These can all be huge indicators. So some conditions that are associated with the depressed HPA axis and depressed cortisol. So that's where that's at stage 3 that we start to see things. Everything has just been so burnt out from stage 2 of trying to adapt that there's nothing left in the tank. Atypical depression starts to show up, seasonal affective disorder, postpartum depression, panic attacks, generalized anxiety disorder, bipolar 2 disorder, PTSD, chronic fatigue, immune dysfunction syndrome, fibromyalgia, autoimmune diseases. So a lot of us have already we're past adaptation. We're now at pure exhaustion. Um, so this can explain so many of the symptoms that are popping up for you. So there's fatigue and apathy, feeling unmotivated, absent-minded, or poor concentration. You might have increased sleep, but it's very poor quality. You're still exhausted. Increased susceptibility to inflammation and allergies, not necessarily infections, but obviously that increases your increased susceptibility to that too, because body's just so exhausted from trying to fight. Um, Depression can be worse in the evening that we see, and early onset perimenopause or menopause, muscle pains, hypoglycemia, having, feeling dizzy, irritable, or sleepy if you're not consuming food every 4 to 5 hours. Symptoms are usually relieved then when you do consume food. We start to, see the hypoglycemia because of those blood sugar disturbances in the body. Frequent colds, bronchitis, sinus infections, UTIs or yeast infections, cold sores, or herpes outbreaks. Those can all be signs of your adrenals just being completely exhausted. Increased aches, pains, and inflammation. Low blood pressure, no appetite in the morning, slow recovery from illness, sugar and carb cravings, a tendency to feel better, have more energy toward the evening can also show up too. Decreased concentration and memory, excessive need for caffeine. I mean, I get it. You're exhausted, so you are reaching for that caffeine to try to keep you going. Unfortunately, caffeine kind of steals the energy for tomorrow when you start to go over on it. Like there are good qualities about with caffeine. There are good nutrients that you can get from it, but um, I mean, there's so much to it with our coffee. There's a lot of molds on our coffee beans. So it tends to turn into toxins for us, like we're just consuming toxins. Obviously, the excess quantities of caffeine that people are drinking are not good for our gut health. There's so much to it. I won't get into that, but that's just a little snippet there. So fatigue and exhaustion, fatigue upon waking, like I mentioned, increased fear and apprehension, loss of ambition, low motivation, low sex drive, scattered thinking, having that short fuse or irritability. Those are all signs of an exhausted adrenal glands as well. So those are all these symptoms, right? And like, how many of you have these symptoms? Like, hi, me, I do. So when we can start to address our adrenals, we can then start to correct, thyroid problems. We can start to correct hormone problems. They just start to correct when we can get the adrenals back into balance. And there are many ways of doing that. Obviously, our stress response is involved, but I'm not going to go into today what lifestyle factors and what nutrients can you really utilize and emphasize to help your adrenals, just because that will take a whole nother time and it's already been 30 minutes. But I will not be doing a live next Wednesday, March 29th, but I will be doing one the following Wednesday. So that will be April 5th. But I will put something in its place for next Wednesday. 100% olive stage 3. Oh, yes. Dana, you are not alone. Don't be embarrassed at all. Caffeine free for a while now due to anxiety and panic attacks. Yes, because there is that as well with caffeine. It really, it stimulates blood pressure. It stimulates your heart rate. So it's a stimulant. It's a stimulant. There we go. Words are really hard. I apologize. It's a stimulant. So anyone who deals with anxiety, caffeine probably is not a great thing for you, for us. Like that's me too. I also, on my food sensitivity test that I took, caffeine is a yellow reactive food for me. So I'm very cautious with that now. And I've noticed my anxiety kind of even out a little bit too. But yeah, you're not alone on that one, and good for you for going caffeine free. Do you do anything with do you do any like green tea or lower caffeine types of teas, or even alternative coffees like using lion's mane or cordyceps, the mushroom elixir coffees, I should say. I'm very curious. See if you're still watching. If not, I would love to know if you come back and watch the video. Um, but having the alternative coffees and like the mushroom elixir coffees can actually really help with the response in the body. A lot of adaptogens. Okay. Yeah. I mean, and maybe right now is not the time to do those, but down the road, I would definitely recommend trying them. There are some good ones out there. I use Rasa currently. Oh, decaf green tea. Yeah, I mean, green tea. I love green tea. I know it doesn't necessarily replace coffee, but ooh, and I need to look into the decaf green tea too. Um, I guess I still need a little bit of something. I think it's like 15 milligrams in the tea bag. But that's really good that you are completely caffeine free. That is awesome. I'm proud of you. I'm going to reach your level. um, I hope that you guys, found this helpful. That's what I have for the introduction to adrenal fatigue. I really wanted you to get a basis on, our stress response and how it correlates with the activation of our adrenals and the different stages that eventually leads to stage 3, where we have this complete exhaustion and burnout. Um, and again, in a few weeks, I will also show the connection between our adrenals and our thyroid and talk more with that, because I'm seeing a lot of things popping up when it comes to thyroid for women, um, you know, people with chronic illness as well, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. Thyroid necessarily isn't working the greatest. It's like when you have one chronic illness, it's really easy to accumulate other ones because our systems are so tied together. But yeah, I hope that you found this helpful, and thank you so much, for watching. Please let me know if you have any comments or questions. If there's anything you want to learn more about, again, I will in 2 weeks go over more of nutrition and supporting our adrenals through nutrition and lifestyle habits. So with that said, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. And hopefully there's some sunshine coming soon, because the temperatures might be, increasing a little bit, but I need more of that sunshine. I don't know about you guys, but I'm solar powered. Um, I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your week. You're welcome. Thank you so much for joining. Um, and in time, you guys take care, and I'll talk to you later.